first thing when I get up in the morning is to say thank you, being grateful that I'm here. And if you are here, you have something to do. And in this case, you just connect with that gratefulness. So I really connect with that energy and also with God. So this is systems that I've been learning through years to just come up and understand the world, and that you have an input, you have decisions to make. And it's just to see everything that happens to you like lessons, and understanding that it's going to take you to the right place at the end.
Welcome to another episode of the Hope Strategy Podcast. We had a really great conversation today with Bisila Bokoko, Bisila Bokoko, the best name so far, funnest name to say, most fun name to say, and also she backed it up with an amazing conversation. She was awesome.
She was one of the friendliest people that I think we've spoken to. I mean, everybody's been nice, but she had something about her that was just exuding friendliness and cheerfulness and hope.
So in doing research for our interview, I was unaware of her, and I started watching videos. And I'm not kidding you. It brightened my day. Like watching 3 or 4 of her videos, I was just like, man, this is somebody that just, and I asked her about it, and we had a good conversation about it.
So positive.
Yeah, positive, but it's just like hope and optimism and happiness, and her smile is contagious, and such a great person. So Bisila is a phenomenal businesswoman, internationally acclaimed for successfully taking companies from local to global. For 7 years, she held the position of executive director of the Spain-U.S. Chamber of Commerce in New York City. She then launched BBES, which is her consulting group, in 2012. That's a real short bio for somebody that has done a lot. I'm going to keep going a little bit more. So her efforts have won her widespread recognition and led to dynamic involvement in Immigrate, a United Nations program that supports up and coming entrepreneurs. Bisila fronted the Women's Scheme and actively worked to support female entrepreneurs in their efforts to launch hard-hitting businesses. She herself is the face of Bisila Wines, her namesake global award-winning drop-made wine in Spain. And then she's a philanthropist as well, and we talked about that. From hosting for the UN in Switzerland to delivering keynotes in the Dominican Republic and radio hosting in Africa, South Africa, Bisila has shared her business expertise and inspirational journey to audiences all over the world. She is the founder of BBALP. I'm going to try to remember what that stands for. Bisila Bokoko African Literacy Project. African Literacy Project, which is a nonprofit organization committed to opening libraries throughout the continent with current presence in Ghana, Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Uganda. Throughout her career, Bokoko has developed relationships with foreign heads of state and international business leaders, key in her becoming one of the 10 most influential Spanish women in American business. Again, you talk to these people. Somebody told me I was speaking with recently, and they said, man, the more I listen to your podcast, the more I just feel like I'm not doing anything. Because you talk to these people that are just doing 10 things at once and are so full of hope and full of drive. And she's one of these people for sure. It was a pleasure to speak with her.
It's hard to figure out how she's doing all this. And then I was looking at her website, and she's been on the cover of Vogue for Spain, and she's in Africa setting up these libraries and everything. And then she's a mom with 2 kids, as we found out on the podcast. It's just like, man, how do you have time to do all this stuff?
Yeah, it was a great conversation. We talked about her upbringing, talked about the work that she's done, talked a lot about where and how she creates systems in her own life to find happiness, and how she's seen others throughout the world in her travels and all the work that she's done, how she's kind of common threads that she's seen across cultures and across languages of how people find hope and happiness in life. And she had some really good insight on all that. We talked about some parenting stuff. And again, another fantastic conversation. Please enjoy this fantastic conversation with Bisila Bokoko.
Something is happening in our world.
Time is very precious.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
Hope in the face of difficulty.
More than machinery, we need humanity.
Hope in the face of uncertainty.
I'm better now than I was. I'm experienced now.
Changing the world can happen anywhere, and anyone can do it.
The audacity of hope.
This is the Hope Strategy Podcast with Corey Blake and Josh Steinley.
Sorry, we're a minute late, Bisila.
No problem. I have time. No worries.
By the way, so you're from Spain, right?
I was born in Spain, yes. My parents are from Equatorial Guinea, which is a very tiny country in West Central Africa. The only one that speaks Spanish, but my family came when they were very young, and I was born in Spain.
Cool. Awesome.
Mucho gusto conocerle.
Igualmente.
Yo hablo español y Josh habla portugués, entonces entiende un poco, pero...
Qué bueno, qué bueno.
Yo hablo un poquito de español, pero no mucho.
Yo hablo español y entiendo portugués.
Okay. I think I heard an interview. So in my research, I was watching an interview that you did, and it was kind of on like a panel with a couple of other women, and it was like almost like The View in the US, it looked like. Does that ring a bell? You know what I'm talking about? And it was it Italian? Or was it Portuguese? Or what language was that?
I was just mixing a little bit of everything. It was with the UN. So I was speaking Spanish. I was speaking a little bit of Portuguese just to welcome some of the members.
Okay.
And French. I could speak fluently. But
okay. The one I was watching was like a TV show, and they were all talking, and I was like, is my Spanish that bad now that I don't understand? And then as it carried on a little bit, I'm like, no, they're definitely saying it's got to be Italian or Portuguese. It was something else. Anyways, I was impressed that you were able to go on there and do it. Maybe it was even French. Geez, I don't know. It is a pleasure to meet you. You know, obviously this is our first time meeting. We've done quite a bit of research and are thoroughly impressed with the person that you are and what you've accomplished and what you're still accomplishing real time. So we appreciate it. The Hope Strategy podcast, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to kind of look at what we're doing and see it at all, but really the idea stemmed in early 2020. Josh and I are business partners at a digital marketing agency. So we have a global agency that does all things digital marketing for clients all over the place. And in early 2020, with the pandemic and everything going on, we were saying, you know, we kind of took a good look at ourselves and said, who do we want to work with? What types of brands do we want to surround ourselves with as we're really redefining our growth strategies with this new world that we live in? And one of the main takeaways that we had was that we wanted to work with hope brands, with brands that inspired hope, that impacted the world in a positive way, that impacted their team in a positive way, that was really had the same kind of core values that we do and just trying to do good and be good. And naturally from those conversations stemmed the idea to do a podcast and to start talking to amazing people. And we're happy to add you to the list of amazing people that we've spoken with. And I know we're going to learn a lot. So we appreciate it.
I just love the idea from the first time. I think that it's exactly the moment that you really could spread the goodness, and people could also start to understand that business and being good, it's possible. It's absolutely possible.
I appreciate that. You were born in Valencia, Spain. Your parent, like we just said, your parents were immigrants from Africa, from Equatorial Guinea? Guinea. So not to be confused with Papua New Guinea, or I think there's just a...
Yeah, you know, there is 4 Guineas in the world. So Bissau, Conakry, there is the Portuguese Guinea, the French Guinea, the Papua Guinea, which is in the other side of the globe. So yes, this is the only one that speaks Spanish.
Okay. So when did your parents immigrate to Spain from Africa?
My mother was 14 years old. And my father was 17 years old. So it was actually at the beginning of the 70s, or late 60s. And they were super young. They went to study and they never came back. Well, eventually, yes, but they stayed for many, many years in Spain.
And what was your upbringing like? I personally, when I was growing up, I lived in Germany. So in Europe, you know, my dad was in the military, and so we lived there. But while I lived there, my dad was married to a woman from Spain. It was a little town outside of, I think, Rosario, which I can't remember what the name of the town was off the top of my head. But we spent 2 summers there, and I fell in love with the people and the culture and the speed at which things moved and the whole thing. I mean, what was your childhood like growing up in Spain?
Well, it was very interesting childhood because I grew up like the only Black kid everywhere I was, because in the 70s, there were not Black kids in the school. But I could tell you that I felt welcome because the Spaniards are extremely good and they open their hearts for everybody. It was more the feeling that I was strange. So sometimes I was going to a little town for a celebration and people would come out of the windows just to see me because they never have seen a Black person. And my father always tells this story that when he went to pick me up in the daycare, sometimes he was walking in the street, just pushing a stroller with a baby, and people will come to him and say, oh, could we see her? Because they never had seen a baby. So my experience was to always feel different, but I make the decision to feel special instead of different, because I didn't want to be separated from others. And just enjoy the fact that I was unique in that sense. And the culture is wonderful. I love the values that it has in Spain, because it's very connected with the family values, which my parents never lost, because even though that they came very young as teenagers, still my grandparents were very present in our lives. Then they moved to Spain, my grandparents from my father's side, and that also helped me to understand what is the African culture. And when my grandparents moved to Spain, they told my parents, but these kids, you raised them like if they were white kids. Why you did that? We have to definitely give them the African culture and tradition. So my grandmother kidnapped us for 3 months and just give us the African way.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to grow up in Spain, but still find the need to connect to your roots. And I love that your grandparents did that, because one generation is all it takes for those traditions, those cultural habits, whatever, to die, right? So
absolutely.
And I think I saw that you went back to Africa for the first time when you were 35, right? Didn't you say that was kind of like your gift to yourself when you were 35, was to take a trip and go back to the motherland, really, right?
Incredible experience, because also my father decided that we needed to really understand what is to be Black in the world. So we were taught to read a lot of books since I was very small, to read books about Pan-Africanism, what is the Black experience in the Caribbean, what is the Black experience that comes out of colonization in Africa, and what it comes from being African-American also, and have the scar of slavery in you. So all of these experiences, my parents were very conscious that we really understand what is to be Black in the world. So I had all the theory, but I didn't know the practice. So when I moved here, when I moved in New York, it was the first experience to really interacting with the African-American community and understand the values and the way they live. And then I went to Africa with 35. And my first impression when I went to the airport in Accra in Ghana was everybody's Black. Oh my God, because it was the first time in my life that everyone around me was Black, because in the school I was unique. Living in New York City, everyone is coming from everywhere. So there is not a particular ethnic group that it's bigger than others. Here you see people from everywhere. So being in Africa was this experience. And I remember that I told the guy, the tourist guy, you know what, I just want to be with the people, because he has prepared a huge agenda with looking for animals and looking at this and looking at that. And I was like, no, I really want to spend time with people. And that was really completely changing me, because it was to really understand now from the theory and blend in. And it was also an identity crisis in somehow, because for one side, yes, I'm African. People see me and they could say, yes, she's African. And when I'm in Spain, people say, yes, her accent is Spanish, her culture is Spanish, but she's Black. So I was never really belonging anywhere. And when I went to Africa, the experience was, yes, you're African, but you are also European, and you're also American, the way you behave and the way you think. So it was kind of adjustments that I needed to do.
You're a chameleon, right? You got all these different. So was it an emotional experience for you? I mean, to go and be surrounded by the people that, where your ancestry was from, did you feel that kind of that connection to your ancestry and to your roots? Was it kind
Absolutely. Even though that Ghana was not the country of my family, but I went there because my husband doesn't speak Spanish, and I didn't want to have the experience every year to be a translator, an interpreter. So this time I said, you know what, in this holiday we have to find a place that they speak also English. But it was incredible, because all of these cultures, all of the way to just the family values that they have, it was exactly the same. So it was very emotional. And also, to just go to Cape Coast and see the slave trade and how all of these experiences has been so impactful in the community. But the best thing for me was the sense of welcoming to everyone. That's the openness, because when you go to Ghana, it doesn't matter what is your color of your skin, where you're coming from, everyone was super welcoming. And that was, I started feeling like a family, and I've been going back and forth constantly. And it was extremely emotional, because it was like to find myself, that part of me that I could not really connect to. And then, of course, when I went to Equatorial Guinea a few years later, it was amazing, because it was really to encounter the language that I knew in my background, because my parents both speak Bubi, which is the ethnic language that our group speak, to understand everything that my grandparents tried to teach me and spend time with them in Africa. That was incredible experience.
I've always been fascinated with ancestry and felt very connected as you kind of do any sort of family research or ancestry research to see where you're coming from. But I had a unique experience. So I am just a little bit, but I do have Native American ancestry. And so my parents were divorced when I was young, and my mom was the one that had more of the Native American upbringing, and her, she was a quarter Native American. Anyways, but all growing up, my dad didn't look like me. And there was always kind of this joke like, oh, who knows, you may be adopted or something, just kind of a joke, because my dad was Caucasian guy and I was darker skinned. And right now I lost my Hawaii tan, but and darker skin, darker eyes, darker hair. Anyways, I was never connected, but even that side of the family that I was really connected to, just because of the divorce, I was really just close to my dad's side of the family, and they're all white and blonde hair, or, black hair, but white people. So I remember when I was like, I feel like I was 21 or something, my sister gave me a gift. She had done a ton of family history research, and she had put in this binder all of these images and stories of that side of our family. And I had an unexpected reaction where I opened the book, and I had never seen these people before. And I opened the book and I saw the first page of people that looked like me, that were family. And I just broke down. I wept. It was really emotional for me, because I was like, oh, there's family that looks like me. And it just kind of gave me this immediate this immediate attraction, or, whatever you would call it, bond, to my ancestors. Anyways, just kind of interesting for you to say, look, I was always kind of the odd one out in Spain, even though culturally, from a language standpoint, that's where I grew up. But to go back to, the place of your roots, even though it wasn't the exact place, you can kind of start to sense and feel a connectedness there that's just natural, right? It's just a natural bond.
It's natural. And also all the traditions for me were natural too, because Spanish culture, yes, is my culture, but it's not the culture of my ancestors. Mm-hmm. So when I saw my grandparents doing ceremonies, the religion that they practice, even though they are Catholics, they also look at the spirits, and the way they were speaking, it was not weird, right?
It just felt natural, yeah.
It just felt natural, because for them, everything has a soul. So if they go to the woods or they go to the sea, they ask permission to the spirits that they live there. And it was not weird. I didn't say, oh, this is nuts, right? I was just, for me, it was like very respectful, and I make a reverence of these kind of traditions.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so interesting, the natural connectedness there. So I want to give a shout out to your YouTube channel. You've got I think you got 70 plus great videos on there. It was just a joyful experience to go and see your smile and to hear you, hear your different thoughts and perspective on the world. I was like, oh man, I really enjoyed going through a lot of those videos as I was watching it. BB knows best, right? It seems to me that you are a motivated, happy, optimistic, hopeful person. Maybe you're just a really good actor. But in watching that, I'm like, oh man, BB is good vibes. She's somebody you want to be around. I'm sure that your life's not easy all the time. You go through difficulties and trials and tribulations just like everybody else. But do you have any habits or systems or processes or anything that you follow that you really help kind of ground you and keep you on an optimistic and happy and motivated course?
Absolutely. Yes. I don't think it's natural. It's not that I was born this way. Mm-hmm. It was really inner work, a lot of inner work. Also the fact that I come in from a very resilient family, because in my house was not time to cry. So my father was extremely authoritarian. And if we come in crying and we have a mistake, it's like there is no time for failure here. You have to be successful. So also this was the pressure of always trying to be the best because I was the black kid. My father said, if you are bad, everybody will think that every person behind you is black.
Jeez,
so I have
no pressure, huh?
No pressure. I have the weight of a whole continent behind me because I was the first generation. So they said, if, for example, my friends went to the clubs and they smoked weed and they did all of these things, and I couldn't do that because for my family it was like, you have to have an excellent behavior. You could not just do anything. And also there is a stereotypes about how people perceive black women. So my father told me since I was very young, you are black and you're a woman. So you have two problems that they're gonna be with you. So when you hear that when you are 11 or 12 years old, you have two options, right? Or see the negative side or see the positive side. Mm-hmm. So even though that my childhood was not easy, and then I always have to break ceilings because professionally it wasn't easy because for a lot of people, Spain is a very welcoming country, but they were not used to work with black people. So I get a lot of no's all the time when I was trying to find a job. But this builds something within you. And then I came to personal development, some books that came my way. And then I make the decision that I have to write the story of my life. And I want that the story to be a positive one. And I always been able to laugh about everything. And that's what I say, smiling is my lifestyle, because I really believe that when you connect with that energy and when you really smile, you're sending a vibe to your brain that everything is fine. And something happens. There is certain magic that happens when no matter how bad things are you able to see to the positive and laugh about it and smile at life, and the life will smile back at you. So this is one of my habits. It's really force myself, and eventually comes natural. You just want to smile all the time. But it's one of my habits. First thing when I get up in the morning is to say thank you, being grateful that I'm here. And if you are here, you have something to do. And in this case, you just connect with that gratefulness. And then I have a ritual of prayer and then meditation, which it depends on the day, but I really connect with something that is higher than I, and even my ancestors. I have pictures of my grandmothers and I connect also with them. And if I have a heavy thing coming in front of me, I just said, I could not just carry this weight by my own. So I'm gonna need extra help. So I need my ancestors to really go with me. So I really connect with that energy and also with God, which I'm growing up in these two cultures where we have a concept of God in Africa, different concept. And then I have the concept that I grew up with, which is the Catholic God. But I just blend them up together and they get along very well, these two cultures. Yeah. And then to just make sure to do things for myself. So the first 3 hours of the day, I make sure that I don't interact too much with other human beings, my kids, my husband, with anyone, before putting myself together. Because sometimes there's so much stress going on and we're trying to be the best version of ourselves in front of others, but we put masks in front of us as a result. And in this case, I prefer, if I don't feel so well, to look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what, today I don't feel so good. So I'm just going to go through that. So this is systems that I've been learning through years to just come up and understand the world, and that you have an input, you have decisions to make. And it's just to see everything that happens to you like lessons, and understanding that it's going to take you to the right place at the end.
That's a lot of nuggets of wisdom in that. I love that. I had a feeling, again, watching a lot of what I had seen and listening to some interviews you've done and things, you can tell when somebody is intentional about their happiness, right? They're intentionally finding hope in the world. They're intentionally finding optimism. It's not something that, especially in the world we live today, if you just allow outside sources to, penetrate you at all times in order to make you feel a certain way, it's not going to turn out very well, right? So I could see there was some intentionalness to what you were doing, and I love hearing that. So when you were a little girl, you told your mom that you wanted to live in New York City, right? You said you had this dream, this goal that one day you were going to live in New York City. And if I remember what I read or saw correctly, that your mom was a little bit like, "What are you talking about? We live in Spain. or African. Like, how are you going to end up in New York City? Sure enough, as you graduated, got an MBA, and then did you get a law degree as well, or was it
I have a law degree, yeah.
So you got an MBA, you got a law degree, you worked in Spain for a little while, and then eventually you became the executive director of the Spain U.S. Chamber of Commerce in New York City, and you were there for 7 years, and to this day, you still live in New York City, right?
Yes.
So hindsight, obviously a lot of life, you look back and you say, okay, I can kind of see how the pieces connected here. As a little girl in Spain, the outsider, that we've talked about, and this dream one day I want to go and see, go where I see on TV or in movies. I want to go to New York City. And next thing you know, you're not just in New York City, but you're fulfilling a very important responsibility and you have a great job in New York City. How does that all come together, hindsight? What lessons have you learned from that?
I mean, all the movies that we see in Spain, they came in from United States, and it was either LA or it was New York. And I just connected with New York from the very beginning. And I saw myself in these places and going to places. And of course, my family was like, this is not going to happen to you. I mean, for my mother, it was just trying to protect me from this dream, and I don't get disappointed because
she didn't want you. Yeah, she didn't want you to feel let down.
Exactly. She was like, how? From her perspective, it was already so difficult to immigrate into Spain, and she did this through a nanny school, through the Catholic Church. My grandparents have connections. It was so difficult that she was like, I don't even speak English. I don't know no one. So why this kid is telling me that she's going to live in New York when I was 6 or 7 years old? But I got a book that it was called Your Magic Songs, and from Juan Dyer. And this, he said, if you really imagine something is going to happen, right? So I started to just make these exercises to try to imagine myself in New York. And I remember with my first internship, they have an office in New York, and I came on holiday the first time. And when I came back, I was so fascinated by New York that I went to my boss and I said, listen, I would love that you send me to the office in New York. And she told me that's impossible because that office, it's normally for people who have connections in the government, and all of the kids of the people influential want to be in that office. So I could not help you. And I said, I know, but still, could you try? And I pushed her to speak with people who were on top of her to see if that opportunity comes. And the opportunity came. It was really like a dream. I was in the office one day on a Monday, and she came in and said, congratulations. We're going to extend you your internship for 6 months in New York. So she told me 6 months, but I heard, you're going and you're never coming back. And she told me, make sure that you know that it's only 6 months. And I said, yeah. But in my head was, they're not going to take me from New York, even with hot water. I'm going to stick. And then I was a few months in the office, and my boss told me, well, it's going to be a position like a marketing manager. Do you want to apply for that? It's a possibility. So yes, many things happened, and I still in New York. Then I was offered the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, and it was a fascinating journey ever since. But the thing was to dream big. I mean, so many people are going to tell you that's impossible. And even my friends were telling me, oh, you are so annoying all day talking about New York. And of course, when you have a dream and you're obsessed by something, people around you end up being tired of listening to you speaking about that. But in my head was, that's my goal, and one way or another it's going to happen. And it happened. And it happened. It was a soft landing because somehow it was first the internship, then I get this great job. So things happen.
So what was the role at the U.S. Spain Chamber of Commerce? What does that entail? Is it a government? Is that a government role then, or is it a private?
No, I mean, the role really is it's a private institution that started when Roosevelt was a president, because at that time in Spain, they did not want to have a relationship with the government because it was a dictatorship government. So they created a platform when the business between Spain and the United States could start conversations away from politics. So this institution maintained that spirit, and it's the U.S. Spain Chamber of Commerce, helping corporations that they want to go to Spain. For example, back then it was Philip Morris, it was companies like Bank of America. They wanted to start operations, and also Spanish corporations who want to do that. So this institution was already a well-established institution, and it's a very interesting position because you are in the conversation of all of the businesses that are between Spain and the United States. So yes, politics normally it shouldn't be involved, but you also speak with both governments. We have a relationship with the Department of State, because if it's going to be any kind of tax issue with a product or something, or with the FDA, we are dealing with that. Okay. So when some products, for example, with Serrano ham, I don't know if you know what is Serrano ham, but it's like the Spanish prosciutto. And the regulations for many years, we were not able to bring this product into the US. So I was involved in all of these kind of certifications that you need. So it was a very fascinating work, because I worked with companies in food, in wines, in infrastructure, renewable energies, finances. And we create also conversations between different big players in the economy to see how these relationships will work. So it was very fascinating. Yeah.
You've been around the world. You've had different jobs. You're an entrepreneur and a philanthropist. And so we'll talk about your business, BBES, which is, it stands for Bisila Bokoko. And what's the ES? I can't remember.
Embassy Service.
Okay. Embassy Service. And that's a kind of a business development consulting, like a global business development consulting company, right? So you do a lot of that. You've also started your own products. I think you had a wine company, or do you still have a wine company? Or
yes, I have the wine company.
Okay, and then you've got a lot of a nonprofit in Africa to help kids learn to read and further their education. And you've opened up all these libraries again. So we talk a lot to these entrepreneurs like yourself who are doing 5 different things at once, and most people are like, wait a minute, how do you have enough time in the day to do all of that? So I want to get to that, but one more question on kind of happiness and optimism. Having traveled the world and going to Africa and doing the work that you've done, living in Spain and working with people there, working for the U.S.-Spain Chamber of Commerce and working with all these different people on both sides. And I think you've also done some stuff in Asia as well and spent some time out there. So what would you say, as somebody who's definitely focused on being your best self and being optimistic and being happy, what would you say are some of the common threads you've seen across cultures even, and across language barriers and across lifestyles and across wealth and, pobreza? How do you say that? Like poverty. Is it pobreza? Is that the word in Spanish? It is, right? Sometimes there's still words that only come to me in Spanish, and I get it. So what would you say are kind of some of those common threads or commonalities among these people that are finding happiness regardless of their life's circumstance?
I mean, one thing I have realized is that sometimes in the more difficult situations, people have a huge amount of strength. One thing I have seen in Latin America and in Africa, it's very endangered. For example, in Kenya, my experience is incredible, because you see people will have nearly nothing, but they're extremely happy inside. And that's also one thing that also taught me to be happier, because when you are living with them and you know that everything in nature, it's reverence and everybody appreciates everything. And even one of my friends is a Maasai, and we work together in different projects. When he comes to New York, like he comes dressed exactly like a Maasai, and we are in Times Square and everybody trying to make pictures with him. We travel all over. We went together to China. We traveled to many places, and he never really want to come back to live in Europe. He has been offered many times to live in the US, in Europe, and he said, yeah, but I love my place. So one thing is I realized that everybody likes to be home. They want to be connected to where they are, and sometimes they are forced to move because they don't have the means to take care of their families and everything like that. But happiness is something within. Because I see also the children, I work a lot with young adults and children. You see them playing with 2 stones, and they could be 6 hours playing. And when my kids tell me, oh, I'm bored, I'm like, how could you be bored? You have everything to not be bored. And these kids, they know how to really entertain themselves. If you do business with someone in Kenya and I ask for something, they don't have it, they say, you know what, my friend have it. And it's okay, because then we're going to share everything. So the whole community is going to just share all the resources of the selling that they do together. So there is a sense of community that is common and normal in a lot of the communities that they are more, let's say poverty, but in reality, they are really rich. They are rich in happiness. They are rich in generosity. I was in Ghana with my mother, and a group of friends and my team, and we land somewhere, and we need to make a stop, technically stop to use the bathroom in the bushes, right? Because we were traveling for a long time. And somebody came, and it was his land, and he said, you know what, if you are here, you should come and eat with us. I know these people eat once a day. He had 3 wives. They all eat from the same table, and all the children, there were like 7, 8 children there. And whatever they have that day, they share it with us. We were more than 7 people, the driver and this, the photographer, everybody who was traveling with us. And they shared that meal. And he said, for me, it's a blessing that somebody who come from so far away just land here. Was just, but it was amazing because you see how people are. So what I realized is there's a common language. And he doesn't speak English so well. He speaks only Twi, which is the language that they speak in that particular ethnic group. But it was such a much love to share, and it was so much happiness. And I know how they live. So I think it's something that you carry within. And sometimes you mentioned this, Corey, that happiness is something that sometimes in the Western world, we believe it comes from outside. And some of these communities, and that's why when I work with these children and I build libraries, we make sure that we let intact the culture, the traditions, and the things that mean so much for them. Because otherwise, if we're trying to Westernize them, they will lose that. They will lose the ability to really be happy with whatever it happens, right? And that generosity, that kindness, that sometimes we lose because we live in this fast-tracked world. Hopefully with this situation that we live in right now with COVID-19, there is a way to consider what is really important for us.
Yeah. I remember the first time that really struck me, and I realized, and I kind of felt that first thought of like that Western approach to service or philanthropy or nonprofits that can be skewed and just not delivered well. I lived where I learned Spanish is I lived in Guatemala for a few years. And so it's not Castellano like you guys speak beautifully in Spain, but it's a different type of Spanish. But so I was down in Guatemala, and I lived with the people, and I loved the people, and I experienced the richness of their culture and the happiness of the children. And they'd come out of their house with the tin roof, and they'd play soccer or football on the street all day with a water bottle. And it was a blast. It was the best, and you know what, if we put some rocks or some sand in the water bottle, then you can kick it farther. So let's do that, and they would just stay outside all day and play. And then they'd go home and they would eat for dinner a tortilla with maybe, if they were lucky, some frijoles, but most likely just a tortilla with some like lemon on it or something, or sort of limon or lime, I guess, on it. And I remember just living there for a few years and just realizing how that happiness didn't come from stuff and things and class and whatever. It really came from focusing on being grateful for what they had and living with their family and being close and, prioritizing things differently. And so when I then came back to the US and I was living in the US, I remember shortly thereafter, I saw an ad for a company that was building homes for families in Guatemala. I can't say, so it's so hard for me just to say Guatemala. So I remember seeing this video and I'm like, oh, that's a great endeavor, right? To go down and build homes, to give them, cement homes instead of the lamina or the tin homes that they lived in. But the depiction of all of these Guatemalan families in this video was that they were sad, depressed, lonely, starving, and now granted, we can appreciate a different quality of life as it pertains to the stuff that we have and the luxuries that we have. But again, like you said, that doesn't mean that we're happier. And I remember being really upset by that because I was like, I've been here with these people. This is not them. It's almost like a director was saying, frown and look at the camera, right? Or it's like, that is not a real depiction of the joy that they feel and the love that they feel and the happiness that they experience on a day-to-day. So I remember that, and that's always stuck with me and then I studied anthropology in school and stuff. And I know, that kind of great white, privilege or that savior complex of like, oh, we're going to come in and fix everything is very dicey, right? There's a way to do it correctly and there's a way not to. So you started I think it was in 2009. Did you start the nonprofit? I believe.
Yes, that was the first time I went to Africa. And then the year later, it was just when we inaugurated the first library there.
Okay. And the nonprofit, and you're going to tell us a lot more about it, but the nonprofit is building libraries in areas in Africa where they don't have access to libraries. Because like you said, in a lot of the cities and things, there are libraries that they can have access to, but you're kind of going to more rural areas where they don't have access to any books, and you build libraries so that they have a place to come study, to come read, to come learn. And that kind of stemmed from your love of learning and your ability as a younger person to be able to read a book and kind of be taken to somewhere new, right? So I love, and Josh is somebody who reads more than anybody I know, and he loves reading and grew up that way as well. But tell me about the kind of the cause and what, of all of the things that you could do to help, why did you choose to build libraries and to get books? And kind of what's the status of that organization at this point? And tell me the name of the organization again.
BBLP, Bisila Bokoko African Literacy Project.
Okay.
Yeah, and it started really, I never really wanted to be a philanthropist, honestly, and I had not that intention when the project started. It was most circumstances because I met someone which was the chief of Kokofu in Ghana. And it was a very funny story. He wanted to give me a piece of land and make me the queen development mother of this little village. And then I told him, okay, I love to be a queen. Of course, who doesn't? I was just looking at the crown and just imagine that moment. But then I realized, okay, I have to do something. And I asked him, I said, what do you need from me? How could I help you? And he said, that is something for you to decide. In 3 days, you will know. Just sleep on it, and in 3 days, call me and tell me what you would like to do. And then I realized the only way that I knew about these people and how they are is because of books. Because if I didn't read about Africa, I would be only a tourist. I will know that from that perspective. But knowing, who were these Ashantis and the culture and the things that matter. And I read all these tribes in Africa and all the slave trade and understanding the impact that I have for them. Then I realized if I know about them in Africa, they know also about what is happening out there. Because when you go to these rural areas, you should see, how much sometimes they have no access, and it takes days for a car to pass by. And sometimes this car don't stop. I stop because whenever I see something and I see somebody, I stopped. And sometimes the kids were in my back and they wanted to know how the phone works. In 2009, some of them, they don't know how to use the camera. And for them, when they see themselves in the camera, it was so cute because they were like, oh, that's me. They don't have school material to go to school, all of these things. And then I realized, okay, there is a way to see the world a little bit bigger than it is because your environment makes you see the world just in a small scale. How could I do the opposite? So they start also dreaming about something. And this was the reason why it was a library, because it was like an epiphany, like, wait a minute. I know about Africa. They could know also about the world. So I told the chief, and the chief said, you see, I told you that you will know what to do.
That's why he's the chief.
Exactly, he was the chief of Kokofu. And, they have like a kingdom, actually. And before the colonizers came, they have a completely different administrative way to handle the tribes and themselves that still remain. And people respect these families and they respect that. And he's the chief, right? So it was very interesting to just start this project and see how people really love to read and be connected. And some of my friends who helped me, the volunteers, they read to the children. But also we realized that we didn't want to separate the families from the children. Because a lot of times the parents feel that if the children get too much knowledge, they will lose them. Because they will not like to go back to the village, or they will look down to everything that is their culture. So we realized, okay, this has to be a family affair. And because Africans, we are storytellers and we love this kind of stories, why not to share that? So people will read and we will be all together around the fire and reading and telling stories and laughing. And it was just great because then we said, oh, this is a family affair. It should not be only for the children. We have to also integrate the whole family so they don't get to an intergenerational conflict. Because sometimes these parents are uneducated and they believe, oh, if my kid is going to be too westernized, I'm going to lose them. They're going to look down to our culture. So that's something that we want to keep untouched. And in this case, that's how I learned also by doing, understanding that sometimes some of the mistakes we did. And then we put in Kenya another one with another organization that they helped me. And this is now we are at the point that we wanted to open this year in April, Senegal. And we couldn't because all of this situation happened and we couldn't. So we want to defer it for the next year. And some years I could not build libraries because I don't have the money to do it. And the way it works is depending on my business. So a percentage of the business goes and we allocate it in the foundation. And in reality, because for me, it's just a very personal project. We don't want to make like a huge foundation and to do galas or ask for a lot of money or anything like that. For me, it's more than if I could use my energy for something that is useful. So years, people donate me books and the only thing we do is to ship them and we stock books somewhere. Some years we could build something. So it really depends. Now we have one in Uganda, one in Kenya, one in Ghana, and we also have collaborations with Equatorial Guinea, with Cameroon and Nigeria.
What type of impact have you seen in the different areas where you've put the libraries? What have some of the outcomes been since that's happened?
In countries, I mean, West Africa is different from East Africa. For example, in Kenya, they love the books that they could travel with the minds. The children love the traveling books, and they keep asking us for that. And they're very involved, actually, in their reading, and the whole family love to read. And imagine that library. I love it because it's in the middle of the savannah. The people who are there are a group that are very involved. We have some other experience that we don't like so much because after 3 years, we support this library for 3 years and then we expect that they're going to continue by themselves. And the one in Ghana, for example, we were not really being able to really engage the community, that they feel that this is for them, because that's what we want to do. We fund the library. We teach the librarian to do the work. People, actually somebody who works in the Bronx Library went to Africa and teach them how to do the whole thing to catalog the books and all of this. In some places we have solar energy, like in Ghana, and people could have that. We partnered with a company that they put the solar panels and we were able to have electricity. So each country is very different. Uganda, they're very committed to education. And the children love to read. And you see, there's been amazing stories about people. I mean, I have in Zimbabwe, for example, I forgot about that. The director has made an amazing job. Some of these children have ended up going to college as a result because they start reading. They realize that even though that they don't have all the knowledge that the school gives them, they could also have alternative knowledge, and they make the exams to access to a higher level of education. So yes, I mean, this is really what makes us continue and don't stop, because no matter what the challenges that we might have, still we know that it's a great project.
Having so much context, one of the things as a parent, I've got kids too. How many kids did you say you had?
I have 2.
Okay, cool. Josh has 3 and I've got 4. So we've got the whole gamut of them. So when trying to educate your kids, so with all of this context and life experience that you have and wisdom that you have from the travels that you've done and the different places that you've seen and these different, areas where you've excelled, do you have any parenting tips on, again, because your kids are growing up in New York City, where you could only have dreamt of growing up as a kid? They're there. Like you said, they're saying they're bored when you're like, what are you talking about? You're bored. I have that same conversation all the time. Do you have is there anything you do to help give them context for a mind that hasn't seen things and been places and only knows that when they ask for food, they get it, how do you approach that as a parent?
Well, as a parent, I mean, from the very beginning, I wanted to be very independent. And that's a sense of independence that I give them because I was an unusual mother who travels and everything. But they also travel with me. And even they were babies, they were able to be in the meeting rooms, to experience everything that I experienced. So they learn also to be very resilient, which I think is a good quality to teach the kids. And also, I always been extremely honest with them with the situation, because parents, we want to protect them from pain, from any difficult situations. So as a businesswoman, I have moments that they were great and moments that they were not so great. So I have to really explain them when they wanted to do something that this is not possible. Because right now I could not afford it. So I've been always very honest, and they've been very involved in the work, and I understand also what are their benefits to live in New York. But one thing that I really want is to do things for themselves, and also to be their own person. I mean, I want them to be themselves and always look at people like one, because they went always to schools that were people from different cultures. They grew up, listened to me speaking in different languages. We spend Christmas and every summer in Spain. So they learn to be in the table with adults, with different people, and know when to speak, when not to speak, to listen and to understand. And also they know they have a lot of privileges. And sometimes when I like to show them the challenges that other children have. And they know also that I help other children, and I have a big relationship. And I always tell them, I'm not your exclusive mother. I'm mother of other children too, because they know this, that I care about other people and they have to share the mom with others. And when it comes to behavior, this year for me, it's been an example of how what I've been teaching them, they really apply it. Because both are teenagers. My daughter is 18, my son is 15. And this year is tough for a teenager because they could not do the things that they were able to do. So then I realized that resilience to be able to really stay home, to entertain themselves, to see ways to do things. And I have seen how they develop also different skills just from not being able to interact with others, but they have a very rich inner life. And if you cultivate an inner life, you don't really need reassurance from others. Another thing that I think is very important is that they should love themselves and not trying to fit into any standards or anything. They need to accept themselves. So that's one thing that, because I grew up with always trying to fit in and looking for external validation from everyone. I mean, they teach me that they really don't care, and I love that about them. They are my teachers in that sense, because the way they grew up, they don't need that. I mean, they're very happy being who they are, and they are very happy in their skin. And in that sense, they are more advanced than I am.
Yeah, which for youth, teenagers, I don't know that there's anything more important than that, right? If that's the foundation of, look, I'm comfortable with who I am, I understand who I am, I have self-worth, I understand my value, you know, that's a great place to start, right? If you can have that, then it'll lead to a lot of positives. Switching gears here a little bit, and Josh, feel free to jump in.
It's all good. You're asking all the same questions I want to ask, so I'm just like, this is great.
So switching gears a little bit, you've done a lot for entrepreneurship for women, as well as minorities. You're an advisory board member for, is it Immigrate?
Immigrate. That's the part of the United Nations that they take care of entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Okay. As your role as an entrepreneur, as a female entrepreneur, as a minority female entrepreneur, you know, kind of getting more and more niche as we go. What does that world look like now compared to maybe what it did earlier in your career? How have you seen that evolve? Where do you see hope in that, you know, because of the evolutions we've seen? But then also, where do you see that we're still falling short as we're trying to continue to empower women and minorities in entrepreneurship and in leadership and in all of these different roles?
Well, when I started, I was in a lot of fear because I grew up looking for security and safety. And most of the women of my generation, we were taught that we need to be comfortable, get your job, and make sure you have your salary and everything. So to make that jump, for a lot of people, and some of my friends were like, you're nuts. I mean, you have 2 kids and you're going to jump in that space. And I jumped into that space out of necessity because they kicked me out. I mean, I lost my job. In this case, I realized that the reason why I lost my job is because I like to do things my way. And I had no choice, because if I go back to corporate, still I will be the rebel. So in this case, I made the decision to just do my own thing. And I was really scared, and I was not prepared because nobody teaches you all these things to be in the uncertainty all the time. And I also didn't have so many mirrors to look into, reference points. Right now, it's much more. And the new generations, they jump, they have no fear, and they realize, if it works, it works. If not, it's okay. But for me, my concept of failure was completely different. It was, if you fail now, maybe there is no other choice. So to just lose that fear was a huge amount of energy and work to do within myself. And also start to speaking with other entrepreneurs who are women, who are minority, and to see what they do well and how they do it. And still, there is no mechanism because first of all, we don't have the network. Men have this network, and they have this network for 200 years. I mean, there is men clubs, and people speak about their ideas, and somebody want to fund their ideas and everything. But women, we don't have that. Some women have the good luck that the husbands maybe want to help them in their business, and they give them a boost. But we don't have this kind of network, really, where we could invest in each other. Also, when it comes to financials and to find capital, most of the banking system, it's really made for products, and for more of the projects that the banks also going to approve is more connected to males. So there is not so many women, and so it's much more difficult. And when you go out of the Western world, even more difficult. I mean, in Africa and all these places. That's why I'm passionate about entrepreneurship, because it's a way also to women become financially independent, to put their ideas to work and to get confidence, because it gives you that confidence. But also because of the way the economy is shaping up, we all going to be forced to think like entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So it's something that maybe there is no way back. And I think that it's a very exciting moment. And I also believe because now there is a better communication between men and women, and I always believe in work together. And I've been extremely fortunate that I always have a lot of men supporting me. My brothers help me. And I mean, whatever I don't know, my brother knows much better about finances, and he's a genius on that. So in the business of wine, he is the one who leads that side because he knows more, and more the marketing person or the public relation person. So I think that sometimes it's good to work together and understanding what is your gifts and understand what you don't do so well and get people to help you. And that I do in my teams. My teams are very diverse, people with different ways of thinking, men, women, people from different countries. So I think it's very important to also understand what could you do well and whatever you could not. I don't try to play the orchestra person. I could not play all the instruments. So I know which ones are good, and the things that I'm not so well, I just find support.
I mean, that's a great management lesson to learn. And one thing that Josh and I have talked about in our partnership from the very beginning is surrounding ourselves with people smarter than us. Yeah. And we mean that very literally. It's not just something you say, but really, like, if you can leave your ego behind and say, if we're going to accomplish great things, we need the best of the best. And so naturally we want to find people that are smarter than us in this area or that area or that area. And then we obviously want to fill a seat in that where we're the smartest person in this thing, as we can contribute to the team. When you're looking at hiring in your different organizations or for your different projects that you're working on, do you look at diversity, and do you look at, like, are you trying to build a foundation where there's a lot of women that you're empowering, or is that not something that you take into consideration as much?
Well, I work both with people everywhere. I have very young people, men and women, in certain places. In Africa, I work very well with men. They were extremely creative and very driven to work, and with otherwise women, I don't look at that or where are they from. Right now, I have people from China, from Argentina, Mexico, Spain, Congo, different places. And I think because I have 3 brothers, I grew up with men. I mean, I'm the only girl at home, and I'm the oldest. So I always been surrounded by males. And I work also in a male world, because when I was in the Spain-US Chamber of Commerce, most of the business that I did was with men. So I'm very comfortable working with men. And I appreciate many things that sometimes we could not see, because maybe, I'm more emotional, or I could be here and look at, and sometimes I need to really put the ideas to work and execute that ideas. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes that's what is good about to have a diverse group, people who see the things from different perspectives. And my husband is German and an engineer, and if I tell him something, he will just look at the situation from a completely different perspective than me. And I think it's good to just welcome that. If you really close your circle, and of course, I love to promote women and I work with them. And that's exactly what I do through my talks. But when it comes to a team, you really need to build teams that are diverse in all of these senses. Otherwise, there is going to be something that is not going to work. So I think that you should not look at male or female. You should look at what the skills that you're trying to do. It doesn't matter where this person come from. But when you have a very diverse group, always the ideas, I'm always satisfied with the things. People always surprise me.
Yeah. I guess as a kind of last question, you've got, like we talked about what, 4 or 5, 6 different things that you're working on, things that you've done. What is it right now where you're putting most of your time and energy? Obviously the world has changed a lot. I was on a call with somebody yesterday and they were saying 2019 feels like another decade ago. Like it doesn't feel like it was a year ago. It feels like we were all different people. The world was a different place, so this year's been kind of crazy, and there's been we've been forced to adapt and change quickly. With everything you've been doing over the past, decade or 2 decades, where are you now and where are you putting most of your time and energy?
Right now in sharing, because during this time, since March, I had a whole agenda, right? And everything fell down. I was in Madrid, and the 10th of March, we came back. I was with my husband in Madrid, and I was supposed to be like 2 months traveling, and I had a lot of things and projects, opening Senegal, library, all of these things, and then boom, everything collapsed. And then I realized, well, I do have something to share. So that's what I started the YouTube channel. I didn't know anything about it. I do it at home by myself and with the help of my team. And it was an amazing story because it was like, let me share my knowledge. Just put me to share what I know. Because if whatever happens, I don't want to take it with me unless I want to just share it, right? Yeah. For me, it was this opportunity to just become the person that could share knowledge and all the experiences that I had. So and then I started to do that. And that's one thing that I would like to continue through my conferences. We just arranged to have a conference for talent in Africa to help people to really get more confidence, leadership, empowerment, because a lot of people, they feel that they're not capable of doing things. And I do believe that we are capable of doing everything. I never thought also that I would be an entrepreneur myself, because I come in from 2 immigrant parents that they keep telling me, be safe, be safe. Yeah. So my mother had the same job for 40 years in the same place. He never changed. My father is different. He's more adventurous, but still he was thinking, you like a woman, maybe get a job and be safe. So I think sometimes we don't even realize what is our potential until somebody could inspire you to see your potential. And that's one thing that I really love to do. And I started last year. I did this with oil company in Africa, that they have a huge amount of population in the company from different countries. And that diversity was not working very well. And they needed to really understand how to work better together. So we create a program for them in diversity and inclusion. And it was so good. And now we want to continue to do that, to realize that most of the things that we think that make us different is a gift, and how we could work together in these people who come in from different places, men, women, different cultures. And that's something that I'm passionate about doing, to build talent.
Awesome. Well, we're so lucky to have had an hour to talk to you. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and your wisdom and experiences with us and with the audience that listens to the podcast. So would you say the best place for people right now to find you and get engaged is on YouTube? Then if you just search Bisila Bokoko, it's Bisila Bokoko. Probably the best name we've had as a guest so far. You get that. You get that a lot.
Don't forget that name, because Bisila Bokoko is some music.
And did you say you go by BB? Did I see that? Is that kind of your nickname?
Yeah, because a lot of people is too long or they don't want to say it wrong. So I go by BB. I'm out of the, let's say, millennials, they call me BB.
Yeah. Or you can just search BB Knows Best on YouTube as well, and that'll take them to your channel a lot. That's what a lot of your videos are under. So seriously, it's a pleasure to meet you, and we appreciate it. I think the breadth of experience that you have, and just your brightness and your smile and your attitude and your positivity, it's something that's contagious, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you here for a little bit. We really appreciate it.
Well, I hope that very soon we could meet in person when the world is back to something different, normal.
Yeah. Josh isn't too far away. Josh is in Boston, and I'm over on the West Coast. But yeah, as soon as the world normalizes a little bit, I'm making a list of all the people that I need to get in person with, because there's been a lot of meetings that I'm like, I wish I could just fly up there and meet them. So yeah, let's definitely do it.
Nothing could substitute to just be in the same space.
For sure.
And have a coffee and look each other at the eye. So I think I still appreciate that. I love Zoom, and I think it has been amazing to work with this experience. But I still love to hack and the touch and just be with people.
Well, let's put that out. Just like you had that dream you were moving to New York one day, let's put that out into the universe that we're going to meet up and sit down and grab a drink one day and have a good conversation.
That will happen. Yes,
awesome. I agree.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bisila. It's a pleasure. Mucho gusto conocerte.
Thank you. Thank you so much also
Thank
for
you so
what
much,
you do
Bisila.
for entrepreneurs, because I think that what you're doing is also sharing, and that's also so generosity. So thank you also for having me and for everything that you're doing. With
awesome.
coffee.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Hello, it's Corey here, and I just want to thank you so much for listening into the Hope Strategy podcast. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are enjoying having these amazing conversations with these incredible individuals talking about hope. We'd love it if you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and share it with anybody you feel that can benefit from these messages of hope. Thank you so much for listening to the Hope Strategy podcast.